Aquí es donde hemos vivido de generación en generación y por eso es que todos los días queremos protegerlo y desde allí nosotros podemos hacer nuestro trabajo.
Querer mantener nuestra cultura viva, ¿no? Y ahí estamos, ¿no? Como en eso de promover y divulgar la cultura en el territorio y incentivando también un poquito lo que es el turismo y pensando siempre en los niños que son los que necesitan más estos procesos.
Somos reconocidos como pueblos étnicos, podemos tener la oportunidad de alcanzar una titulación colectiva y habernos conformado como consejo comunitario en cada una de las comunidades nos da una fortaleza porque los consejos comunitarios son los que velan por la defensa territorial.
WWF llegó al territorio, se dio a conocer y siento que nos ha brindado ese apoyo.
Que han venido incentivando la conservación y aprovechamiento sostenible de los recursos, que han venido trabajando con nosotros de la mano para el tema de acciones directas en el territorio.
Los manglares, para nosotros los humedales, son fuente de vida, de riqueza, hace parte de nuestro desarrollo, hace parte de nuestro entorno, hace parte de nuestra cultura.
Esto es un paraíso, mi tía es un paraíso, mire ese mar azul, mire esos manglares, mire las aves, mire tantas cosas juntas.
The oceans are significantly impacted by climate change. And we are currently making great efforts in protecting the oceans. Marine conservation programs, blue economy programs, maritime protected areas are all great initiatives. But there's something missing here so far. That is attention for how the new protection regimes will actually be enforced.
Safeguarding the maritime environment is a vital element of maritime law enforcement as it contributes to protecting the economic resources of a state. It also ensures that rule of law is maintained across the oceans.
With rising sea levels, most likely what we're going to see in the near future are new expressions of blue crime and different patterns of it. That quite obviously poses significant challenges and new tasks for maritime law enforcement around the world. To give you one example, Palau has one of the largest marine protected areas. It is a small island state, it has limited capacity, but now on top of it, it is in charge to protect this large marine protected areas. It requires law enforcement capacities on quite a significant level.
GMCP is conducting an assessment on the impact of climate change and rise in seawater levels on maritime law enforcement infrastructure such as piers, jetties, and precincts in Palau, Kiribati, and Tuvalu in the Pacific. This assessment will also look at changes to coastline and impact on patrolling patterns and navigation.
More tourism, in particular in the South Pacific Islands, will imply more ships coming to these waters, and ships can carry invasive species. And that quite obviously carries significant risks for the marine environment. Think about sharks, think about turtles. These are threatened by invasive species. There are very good and solid international regulations, but as we all know, regulations are only good when they're actually being enforced, and that requires a significant capacity.
The GMCP assessment will also examine issues relating to the transfer of invasive species and pathogens due to the movement of marine craft. The issue of maritime biosecurity is vital to maintain the indigenous ecosystem in pristine environments of the Pacific Island states.
But how can we, with very limited seagoing capacities, actually enforce the law in these areas? There's a solution, and the solution is to work with artificial intelligence, new surveillance technology, satellites, and machine learning.
GMCP is combining advanced technology, in particular satellite technology, with maritime law enforcement capability to protect the marine environment in the ocean space. In doing so, satellite data is used to track vessel movements across marine protected areas, which provide an added advantage to maritime law enforcement agencies to undertake efficient deployment and patrolling patterns.
misaotra anao nametraka an'izay ny agnarako Rakoto Manairina Ziste dia monina eto agnatin'ny fokotanin'ny Kivaro eto avao district Morondava région Menabe. Agnaran'ny VOI-nay zany Agnala Maitso tsy ho an'olo. Natsapako azy zany nanomboko tao amin'ny 2010 zany nahatsapa an'io aho fa hoe tena hoe mahomby tanteraky ty VOI ty zany sady ala onko tena misy fivoarana ho anay. Io zany ro misy tombotro ho anay satria la simba zany ny tontolo iainana, simba koa ny fanananay satria ndra io fahasalamana mienga amin'ny tontolo iainana io ao amby. Io zany tena narovana ny ala onko tena mafy de mafy satria amin'ny resaka voajanahary avy ny sikilony satria la tany zany ro tanà ro tsy misy ala lasa mame fofony tsio ny fahasigny zany aty agnivotany aty aby. Misy zany ankoatrin'izay zany misy fandraisan-jarany fokon'olo avao koa manahaka ny hoe tsy tontolo iainan'io avao moa tsy ho ala avao ro arova fagnondragny rano zay zany ny arova iaby. Manahaka ny hoe misy olo manday laro, misy olo hoe mandeha sasy be, manao tarikaky, regny zany agnisany tena mavitsiky ireo vozon'olo ifotony satria tombontsoa zay zany ao zany ny misy an'le jakaky, misy an'le fia, misy an'le tsitsiky, misy an'le tantely, de ao koa zany ho famboaranay tragno, famboara zay aloaloko amboaranay valavalan'ny akoho. Zay zany mahatsara ny dirako agnatiny ty VOI tiky. Marina de marina igny. Ny biby zany mienga ato agnatiny ala onko maromaro zany ny biby ao. Satria tsika la lasa tsika filoha zany ro lasa malemilemy de militsy le avy any ivelany. Ka zay tompoko afatsafasy mikasika an'io fa tokony miray mihina. Mikasika ny hoe fiarovana ny tontolo iainana amin'izao VOI eran'izao tontolo zao hoe arovantsika io fananatsika io mba ho lovay ny fiaramanimby afara ao, mba ho roborobo am'izay zany mba tokony miezaky tsika. Misaotra anao nametraka an'izay ny agnarako Rakoto Manairina Ziste dia monina eto agnatin'ny fokotanin'ny Kivaro eto avao district Morondava région Menabe. Agnaran'ny VOI-nay zany Agnala Maitso tsy ho an'olo. Natsapako azy zany nanomboko tao amin'ny 2010 zany nahatsapa an'io aho fa hoe tena hoe mahomby tanteraky ty VOI ty zany sady ala onko tena misy fivoarana ho anay. Io zany ro misy tombotro ho anay satria la simba zany ny tontolo iainana, simba koa ny fanananay satria ndra io fahasalamana mienga amin'ny tontolo iainana io ao amby. Io zany tena narovana ny ala onko tena mafy de mafy satria amin'ny resaka voajanahary avy ny sikilony satria la tany zany ro tanà ro tsy misy ala lasa mame fofony tsio ny fahasigny zany aty agnivotany aty aby. Misy zany ankoatrin'izay zany misy fandraisan-jarany fokon'olo avao koa manahaka ny hoe tsy tontolo iainan'io avao moa tsy ho ala avao ro arova fagnondragny rano zay zany ny arova iaby. Manahaka ny hoe misy olo manday laro, misy olo hoe mandeha sasy be, manao tarikaky, regny zany agnisany tena mavitsiky ireo vozon'olo ifotony reo satria tombotsoa zay zany ao zany ny misy an'le jakaky, misy an'le fia, misy an'le tsitsiky, misy an'le tantely, de ao koa zany ho famboaranay tragno, famboara zay aloaloko amboaranay valavalan'ny akoho. Zay zany mahatsara ny dirako agnatiny ty VOI tiky. Marina de marina igny. Ny biby zany miainga ato agnatin'ny alaonko, maromaro zany ny biby eo. Satria tsika la lasa tsika filoha zany no lasa malemilemy dia militsy le avy any ivelany. Ka zay tompoko afatsafa sy mikasika an'io fa tokony miray mihina. Mikasika ny hoe fiarovana ny tontolo iainana amin'izao VOI eran'izao tontolo zao hoe arovo atsika io fananatsika io mba holovay ny fiaramanimby afara ao, mba ho roborobo. Am'izay zany mba tokony miezaka tsika.
Bajo el cielo al occidente baja el río cristalino y rompiendo la corriente canta un corazón perdido que llora y llora porque es testigo de la vida que se agota en el olvido y con su llanto va recordando el camino a su bohío. El jardín del paraíso, sucursal del cielo mío. Desde el valle hasta los cerros siempre estás cuando suspiro. Y aunque me vaya, no dejaré que se marchite tu albedrío. Cunita de oro, donde se besa el mangle con el mar bravío. Vuelve a florecer con tu amor la primavera, dulce libertad fue crecer en esta tierra de gente que te quiere con el alma, que no pierde la esperanza de volverte a conocer. Y aunque fuimos hijos de la guerra, aprendimos poco a poco que la paz vuelve a nacer. De tu cielo quiero ser, que la corriente me lleve, para verte florecer, que la corriente me lleve, en mi potrillo voy jugando, que la corriente me lleve, con mi chichorro y mi canasto, que la corriente me lleve, a las gochas yo le canto, que la corriente me lleve, si hay subienda me levanto, que la corriente me lleve, para mi gente y Kunming-Montreal, que la corriente me lleve, Marimbia y Sabureo, que la corriente me lleve, 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 hoy, 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 hoy.
Uno de los retos yo creo que ya lo tenemos cumplido y que fue llegar aquí.
Estas reuniones de la COP16 nos generan mucha experiencia de compartir, donde posteriormente no se daba estas participaciones, pero también no fue tan fácil.
Primero, afrontar un tema en donde somos criminalizados, cuando es de bien cierto que la pesca artesanal es la actividad que durante pandemia alimentou ao mundo.
Então, é disso que a gente está falando aqui, até onde essa coisa toda é boa. E vem um monte de presidentes aqui, representantes de países para discutir uma economia azul, sabendo que ela é muito ruim para o meio ambiente. Ainda assim vem aqui como é que vamos fazer para aumentar isso, para ganhar mais dinheiro.
todos los procesos y todos los problemas que tiene van sumados a las exploraciones de hidrocarburos en el mar, las concesiones de playa en las comunidades.
Y nosotros tenemos son grandes debates dentro de nuestro país. Por ejemplo, ahorita que los quieren poner una planta petrolera, estamos preocupados en esa área porque Honduras es pequeño y si ponen una planta petrolera, pues sabemos que al haber un derrame de petróleo, pues los matan todos los bancos de pesca y destruye toda la fauna que está a su alrededor.
El desplazamiento y el crecimiento del turismo en grandes emporios económicos que hoy lo que hacen es comprar los predios de los nativos y desplazarlos y así prácticamente nosotros cada día vamos perdiendo mucho más territorio.
Hemos hecho mucho movimiento a la defensa de la pesca. El gobierno de nuestra región no está implementando ningún apoyo hacia los pescadores.
El segundo reto, yo creo que, y principal, son nuestros derechos. Por eso estamos aquí, para pelear por nuestros derechos. Siempre se han vulnerado los derechos de las personas que viven en el borde costero, de los pescadores artesanales.
Y el derecho a la razón como pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales es un derecho de tener esas relaciones y compartir eso para defender el derecho sobre nuestra conservación, nuestro bosque y tanto marino costero, tanto continental.
Temos essa responsabilidade, sabe? De transmitir para outras pessoas o que de fato é bom, o que de fato não é tão bom, ou é ruim, ou é muito ruim.
Buscar puentes, mecanismos para poder salir adelante, eso sí, siempre y cuando que la conservación se haga con nosotros, no dejándonos fuera.
Yo no me voy, aquí me quedo, esta tierra es mía, aquí me quedo. Yo no me voy, aquí me quedo, esta tierra es mía.
los manglares hacen parte de la vida. Yo lo he denominado en mi poquita sabiduría, es el banco genético de millones de especies.
Para llegar a nuestra finca tenemos que pasar siempre por el manglar y además nos protege de las fuertes corrientes cuando hay erosiones en los ríos. Es la salacuna de todas las especies, es nuestra forma de vivir.
Aquí tenemos el rojo, el negro, el blanco, el botón, el pelliciera, que es el piñuelo, y el nato. Al ecosistema de manglar le van poniendo más leyes y más protección, que es lo que uno viene buscando, porque el ecosistema de manglar es prácticamente la vida de uno por acá.
Los manglares para nosotros ya se han convertido como que si unos hijos de nosotros. ¿Por qué? Porque nosotros los sembramos, porque nosotros los cuidamos, porque nosotros defendemos.
Y al principio uno notaba el manglar muy muerto, por ejemplo en estas partes de aquí, muerto, acabado. Y mire que ya están como otra vez volviendo a vivir. Ya uno le ve sus hojas verdes, muy bonitas.
Aquí es donde hemos vivido de generación en generación y por eso es que todos los días queremos protegerlo y desde allí nosotros podemos hacer nuestro trabajo.
Querer mantener nuestra cultura viva, ¿no? Y ahí estamos, ¿no? Como en eso de promover y divulgar la cultura en el territorio y incentivando también un poquito lo que es el turismo y pensando siempre en los niños que son los que necesitan más estos procesos.
Somos reconocidos como pueblos étnicos, podemos tener la oportunidad de alcanzar una titulación colectiva y habernos conformado como consejo comunitario. En cada una de las comunidades nos da una fortaleza porque los consejos comunitarios son los...
We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, folks. Great to see everybody still here, but we have a lot more fun to go.
The vast expanse of our ocean, from its mysterious abysses to its vibrant coast. The vast expanse of our ocean, from its mysterious abysses to its vibrant coasts, holds secrets yet to be unveiled. But one thing is certain, its irreplaceable role in making Earth a livable haven. Ocean-based climate action could deliver up to a third of emission cuts needed by 2050. As a major regulator of our climate, a healthy ocean not only helps cool down our warming world, but protects us from worsening climate impacts. Together, we are catalyzing momentum across 5 key sectors: marine conservation, shipping, ocean renewable energy, aquatic food, and coastal tourism. By embracing the ocean's full potential, we're not just protecting the largest ecosystem on Earth, we're reshaping our destiny, ensuring a healthier, more equitable world for generations to come. Dive into this journey with us and discover the ocean breakthroughs.
Hello. This is such a great room. Can you hear me properly? Yeah? Yeah? Ooh, that's a lot of me. Hi. Well, I want to say excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, but mostly I want to say dear ocean friends, welcome to the Great Ocean Climate Talk Show live from Cali, Colombia. Today it's a very important show, original production, I may say, that is brought to you by the Ocean and Climate Platform, IOC UNESCO, GIZ, Ocean Action 2030, UNCMS, the World Resource Institute, and WWF, the Ocean Climate Crew. My name is Lorelai Picourt. If you don't know me, there's a very big picture of me up there, so this is very unsettling. And I'm here to set the stage for this Ocean Climate Talk Show. Today, it's very special for us because it's not just to talk about ocean and climate relationship. It's to bring the climate and biodiversity communities together. The ocean is definitely the best ally to do so. So today we are bringing participants, we're bringing contestants that came from a far away kingdom, the UNFCCC. And the whole idea here is to try and make some bridges between CBD and UNFCCC. Today we're here very humbly before you to present some of the work that we have been leading for the last couple of years and to officially launch at CBD the Ocean Breakthroughs campaign. To do so, we just want to showcase that the best way to connect the dots to navigate around ocean and climate is with the ocean and the ocean community. So before we dive into all of this exciting portfolio of ocean-based climate solutions, I want to take you on a little journey. You may close your eyes if you feel like it, because we need to be a bit visionary here. I want you to imagine a world where the ocean is thriving, a world where coastal and marine habitats are restored, and where massive loss of ocean life has been averted. A world where coastal communities are resilient, supported by a vibrant, equitable, and regenerative blue economy that is spurring employment and contributes to food and energy security for all. I want you to imagine a world where we have brought emissions responsible for climate change down to zero, where the ocean is 100% sustainably and equitably managed. I want you to imagine this world that we want for the future. So, if we actually want to fight for this vision, this is the reason why we have created the Ocean Breakthroughs. Not only just to envision and dream about this beautiful world, but to concretely deliver the path forward towards net zero inclusive world by 2050. How did we do so? We worked with the leadership of the high-level climate champions, and I'm sure many of you heard Razan Al-Mubarak this morning inspire you. And thanks to her leadership and the work of the Marrakesh Partnership, which is civil society in the climate fora, we brought about 50 partners, some of the most prominent organizations in their field, working with FAO, Iberostar, Conservation International, WWF, and so many more. But most importantly, we identified some of those crazy imaginative folks that we have in this ocean community, we decided to bring all of the sectors together to get people who don't necessarily agree on everything to sit down at a table and envision the world that we want for the ocean and climate. So what we want to do with the Ocean Breakthroughs is to simply design a blueprint around 5 key ocean sectors that you'll hear more about today, but namely they are conservation, shipping, energy, food, and tourism. And by identifying positive tipping points in each of these sectors by 2030, we have a very real chance to bring a better world and the transformational changes that we need for a net zero world in 2050. But ultimately, the story I want to tell you is one of partnership and collaboration. It's just a group that is determined that together, we can actually do it. And we can do it with the ocean, our great connector, as we have been reminded since this morning. So now, I mean, I'm a talk show all by myself. I could do that all day, really. But the idea is for you to also understand that we're all about action, very concrete, very tangible action across those 5 sectors. So to help you navigate the Ocean Breakthroughs, I would like to call on my friend and colleague, Polly Merriman, who will be the one driving this game show. She will be the presenter. And I would like to ask our 5 contestants to get ready, because in the words of Queen Rihanna, it's time to shine bright like a diamond. So let's go.
Thank you, Lorelei, and welcome to the Great Ocean Climate Talk Show, where today we are going to have everybody's favorite Pitch Your Breakthrough session. My name is Polly Merriman, and I work for WWF's Global Oceans Practice, where we take this show very seriously. Given its importance for securing productive and resilient ocean ecosystems for the benefit of people and nature. And as you heard from Lorelei, our show today will feature ocean-based solutions to tackle biodiversity loss and climate change. And we're delighted to have an all-star lineup of contestants who will shortly deliver their 3-minute pitch to demonstrate how their breakthrough can harness the full potential of the ocean to reduce emissions, boost the economy, while playing a key role in achieving the targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and of course reducing emissions. And we know this is a critical and timely topic given the urgent need to advance synergies and promote greater integration to deliver on both nature and climate goals, but also across these communities. And today we will show you how the ocean is bringing us all together. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. And let's start the show. My first contestant today is Ignace Beguin, the ocean lead of the Climate Champions team. Ignace, welcome to the show today. Ignace, please tell us how the conservation breakthrough supports the achievement of both biodiversity and climate goals. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Polly. First of all, I should say that I'm here standing on behalf of Conservation International and IUCN, who are the two leads of this marine conservation breakthrough, and I'm really, really glad to be the spokesperson for them today. So the marine conservation breakthrough, in short, $72 billion invested by 2030 in order to protect and restore 30% of our ocean. The idea here is very much to be able to, make the case on why marine conservation is relevant for climate, marine, of course, conservation, biodiversity, and people. It's complex. It's including many different elements. But what we have done is that we have break down the marine conservation so far in 3 key ecosystems to make it a bit more tangible and accessible for businesses, financial institutions, governments, and even NGOs. The 3 key ecosystems so far are mangrove, corals, and seagrasses. And what is very really, the high potential of this is that we are able to measure impact and the level of investment by 2030. And if we are able to do so, we know that we are able to progress on this common path. The other element that I think make it the marine conservation breakthrough pretty unique is its people-centered approach. So we don't do that just for nature by the sake of nature, but it's for nature and for people. and in each of these mangrove, coral, and seagrass target, we have able to measure the impact of restoring and protecting this ecosystem will have on coastal communities. So if you want to protect the ocean, deliver on the Paris Agreement, deliver for people on sustainable development, join me in making the marine conservation breakthrough a reality.
Woo! What? No. Our contestants do not get to leave the stage. That was a fantastic start. Thank you very much. I'm going to grill you later, so please have a seat. Oh, my gosh. What a great start. And now we're going to keep the game going. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Annie Mark, Senior Director, Global Partnerships, EDF. Come on up to the show, Annie. Welcome. Delighted to have you. And we want to hear from you about how the aquatic food breakthrough supports the achievement of both biodiversity and climate goals. The floor is yours, Annie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Mark with Environmental Defense Fund, and I'm here today to talk about aquatic foods, ranging from fish and shellfish to algae and seaweed. This can offer a powerful solution for both the global biodiversity and the climate crisis. The problem is this solution is often underfunded and overlooked. So the Ocean Breakthrough calls for a global transformation in the way that we manage our marine resources. Thank you. This means aiming for sustainable management across 100% of fisheries, both industrial and small scale, growth of sustainable aquaculture by 35%, and a 50% reduction in global loss and waste in aquatic food by 2030. We can achieve this by promoting sustainable aquaculture, responsible wild fisheries, reducing food loss and waste while promoting circularity along value chains and restoring ecosystems like seagrass meadows and mangroves. And of course, aquatic foods contribute to several of the global biodiversity framework targets. Targets 5, 9, and 10 on fisheries and aquaculture, Target 8 on climate action, and many, many more, and of course, the adaptation imperative of the Paris Agreement. But these benefits go further. Aquatic foods are some of the most resource-efficient proteins and micronutrients on the planet, often requiring less water and producing fewer emissions than many of the terrestrial sources of protein. Aquatic foods rely on nearly 3,000 species and over 600 species in aquaculture, making it an incredibly diverse food production sector. Sustainable aquaculture and well-managed fisheries can relieve pressure on overexploited species, protect habitats, and maintain biodiversity. And the coastal ecosystems, like mangroves, seagrasses, kelp beds, are linked to aquatic food production and play a critical role in carbon sequestration and habitat protection for a variety of species. Even further, aquatic foods can feed a growing global population. So more than 3 billion people rely on aquatic foods as a primary source of protein. This is going to be a nutritional necessity as we come under further pressure from global climate change. So what are the solutions? We have two. One, we must incorporate aquatic foods into all of our climate and biodiversity plans. The national climate plans, the nationally determined contributions, and the national biodiversity strategies and action plans. Number two, we have to move to implementation. This includes funding. The FAO has recently found that the adaptation finance gap for aquatic foods is about $4.5 billion a year for all developing countries. That is an achievable number. So that's our pitch. It's time to unlock the potential of aquatic foods for global climate and biodiversity and provide a food-secure future for all of us.
Oh, Annie, that was great. Thank you. You almost made it. You almost got the buzzer. These talk shows are really killer. All right, it is now my great pleasure to bring up our next contestant, Rennie Myers, who is a global policy lead with Ørsted. Welcome to the show. Woo-hoo! All right, Rennie, we want to hear from you about how does the energy breakthrough support the achievement of both biodiversity and climate goals? Over to you.
Thank you, Polly, and hello, everybody. What if I told you that our
energy systems could contribute not just to stymieing biodiversity loss through decarbonization, but providing a net positive future for ocean ecosystems. We have effectively 25 years to get off fossil fuels for good, and just 6 years to slash methane emissions from that same source. Luckily, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, reminds us that while fossil fuels make up 80% of today's energy mix, that's big, we don't need any more long lead time conventional oil and gas products. That's a lot. But to decarbonize our energy systems, we also then need to respond at scale. So with scale could come bigger impacts. Unless we have an idea of what good looks like. That means that we need to consult communities, people, and deliver for people, communities, and nature, while also delivering 380 gigawatts of offshore capacity for those communities too. So what is industry doing? We're working with academia, local communities, governments to avoid and mitigate impacts. That's bread and butter stuff. But to get to net positive, we can't do it alone. We at Ørsted are already working on innovative solutions to this end, like low noise installation technologies that reduce installation noise down to the baseline background levels of the Baltic Sea, integrating biodiversity into every step of our project development process with new restoration and conservation actions, and deploying 25 biodiversity projects across the world to holistically support ecosystems function while financing all of that good stuff with a blue bond. So if we commit holistically together to this net positive vision, we can mobilize over $10 billion of concessional finance for developing economies to leapfrog developed markets and deliver that globally just transition. We've got to do it together. Offshore wind is here to help. We need to redirect harmful subsidies, electrify and provide energy access to 750 million people still living without electricity, reinforce the underpinning infrastructure like grids and transmission, to integrate our NDCs and NBSAPs as investable roadmaps for climate action. We can only do this with your help, so I want to ask if you're in.
All right, a challenge to the audience. Thank you, Rennie, and welcome to our next contestant on the stage, Dr. Simon Chin Lee, lecturer at the University College of London. Come on up to our show.
Thank you, Polly.
Simon, we are very keen to hear how the shipping breakthrough supports the achievement of both biodiversity and climate goals. Over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm a lecturer and academic, so I have distilled a series of 1-hour lectures into 3 minutes for you here. Let's put it this way. Shipping itself has flown under, or I should say sailed under the radar for far too long in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. But it is fundamental to the global economy. Without shipping, whether we know it or not, the goods are moved around the world via ships, but they also produce 300 million tons of fossil fuels a year. But what happened in 2023? We had a breakthrough. In 2023, we had a breakthrough. We had a political breakthrough. I hear at the stalls, quite rightly, the sniggering can start. But at the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, last year in July, they came up with a plan, a strategy, a greenhouse gas strategy that was going to build pathways forward to align itself with Paris to 1.5 degrees. This strategy sets out all future policy. So now all future policy is supposed to take into account this idea of reducing greenhouse gases first to 30% by 2030, 80% by 2040, and then overall net zero by 2050. But how are we going to do this? So the first, and this is research done by the CCT, UCL, and others, is to uptake on zero emissions and near zero emissions, this is including in tech, in fossil fuels, and in energy sources. The important part here is moving early movers, let's put it that way. The reason is we need to get the things off the ground fast, and we need to get them going. This is because we are wanting to learn from long-term progress as well. And the reason I say this is that we keep talking about these, any solution at all as if it's something that's far away in the future, right? As if it's going to creep up on us. We know it's there. It's already there, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's climate change. We know these solutions. And that's the other thing maybe I'll end on here, is that these solutions are out there. We have technologies now in order to do this, both in the ships and in the ports. Now, there's lots I could go in on this, but I think what we need to know is that we only, unfortunately, for shipping, at the very beginning of any solution moving forward. It is a breakthrough, but the breakthrough starts now.
Woo. All right, Simon, thank you for that pitch. And now it is my pleasure to bring up our last but not least contestant today, Victor Galvin, Head of Nature-Based Solutions with Iberostar Group. Victor, welcome to the stage and our show today, and we're keen to hear from you on how the tourism breakthrough can deliver against climate and biodiversity goals. Welcome, the floor is yours.
I'm going to try to squeeze everything I had planned in my head and all the way here in 3 minutes. Excuse me if I go a little bit over, right? But the breakthrough that I'm going to present on coastal tourism is something that the people here have been working on for about 1.5 years now, and many thanks to some of you guys already here. It will be further presented at COP29. You guys know that tourism and travel represent about 10% of the global GDP. If we were to convert that into US dollars, we're talking about an astronomical amount of about 10.5 trillion. 1 in 5 jobs are also employed by this sector. And when we looked at financing, the tourism sector generates about $800 billion for the global GDP just in tax revenue for the coastal communities. That's direct investment. When we look at indirect investment, thinking about the actions that we do, our supply chain, that also adds another $1.4 trillion to the economy. Coastal tourism, the one that depends on sun and beach and surf, makes up about 50% of the community, the tourism sector. And just a couple of days ago, someone from the WTCC said this, that over 50% of the travelers travel to connect with nature, right? And looking at this same sector, about 50% of that sector also goes to coastal communities. They work on least developed countries. They go to SIDS. And when we think about the plans for the global economy and population growth, the population growth is not expected to peak until about mid-2080s at 10 billion people. With that number and the increase in coastal tourism, you can see how all these small communities, all the small islands are going to be under tremendous stress in their waste, in their energy, and in their food and their water. So there must be an active investment in how we deal with this. In addition to this, our sector contributes about 8% of the global greenhouse gases. But that said, we also need to look at the positive aspect of this, right? Tourism is able to generate a lot of changes. We're able to invest in the different resources. And if we look at some of the commitments that the sector has made, they have been a signatory to the Glasgow Accord, where they're committing to halving their emissions by 2030 and being net zero by 2050, right? We're also committed to investing in the communities and the different sectors and focusing mostly on those LDCs and all this and these other institutions. These goals that we have for the Glasgow Accord also support the Paris Accord, are also in keeping with the IPCC's recommendation for 1.5 degrees Celsius. And what we're looking at now is how do we make this sector be favorable or in support of climate initiatives and biodiversity. This is going to be a very challenging activity, but in behalf of Iberostar, we're already starting to take initiatives, and that's why we're working with a community-based effort and comprehensive issue to start supporting the creation of marine protected areas in places like Jamaica, are some of the ones that are more susceptible to this impact.
Woo.
Thank you very much.
All right, fantastic. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. And now we have heard from all of our contestants. Thank you for their fantastic pitches. We now want to hear what our audience thinks of these pitches. And we've heard this is a ruthless crowd, in fact. So we're going to do a little low tech. So I don't know if any of you are having trouble with Wi-Fi. We're going to go back to our hands. We're going to see a show of hands. We're going to ask everybody to raise their hand. And if you like the marine conservation breakthrough the best, you're going to give a 1. Aquatic food is number 2. Aquatic food is number 2. Offshore wind is number 3. Shipping is number 4. And coastal tourism is number 5. So have a think. And now let's see the results. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Okay, this looks a little fragmented. Some would say just like ocean governance. So we're going to give our contestants another try. We think they need to dive deeper to see if we can change those numbers a little bit. So I'm going to start with you, Annie. Could you please tell us how can science and data support the design of sustainable and adaptive fisheries management? Over to you.
Thank you. So first, fishing policies must be science-based, and they need to include traditional and local knowledge as well, and they have to be cross-sectoral, so everyone needs to participate to manage those fisheries, and access to data and information is critical and must also be included.
Okay, all right.
You're not getting me on the clock this time.
Okay, very good. You get extra points for that. I think we forgot to say that if you're quick. Now, Rennie, let's go to you. Our audience, I heard earlier, would love to hear from you about how technological innovations can drive a net positive impact on biodiversity in offshore wind development. Rennie?
Sure thing, and I'm happy to talk about this anytime over the rest of the conference, so please be in touch. There's a long lifetime to these projects, and so we can innovate not just in how we design, how we construct, but how we operate and how we decommission. So some of the things that are most exciting to me are things like working with this company called Spore, which is an AI probe. They work with AI to do avian identification and to help inform our monitoring and mitigation protocols. 3D printed reefs that we've installed in the Kattegat Strait, so integrating restoration activities within those wind farms. Those are specifically designed for cod, and we pair that with all sorts of other restoration activities related to the cod life cycle. And that low noise mitigation technology that I was just talking about. It's really critical that as we continue to scale up the size of turbines, that we're putting that much more energy into how we actually provide mitigation solutions during construction. And all of those things are particularly possible with enthusiasm and passion from within the organization, but they're also possible with the support of governments. So making sure that we've got the right subsidies and incentives and flexibility in place to be able to try the things that will help us meet those targets is critical.
All right, Rennie, thank you very much. We're going to move to you, Victor. Please share with us how nature-based solutions can also contribute to transitioning the coastal tourism industry, notably for community engagement. Over to you.
Great. In Jamaica, we have created a comprehensive coastal sustainability initiative that is community-driven. Working with the fishing community that we have there, we petitioned the government of Jamaica for the creation of a sanctuary. And earlier this year, we got that official approval of the Grange Pan Fish Sanctuary. It's community-driven, like I said. It's currently being managed by 4 fishermen representing the entire community, and by a sector represented by, I better start with 4 additional members. This contributes 335 additional hectares to the 30 by 30 of Jamaica's commitment. We're also ensuring that the benefits of the sanctuary are community maintained, and we're using the sanctuary to create alternative income opportunities for them to work as core restoration practitioners, working in buoy maintenance, installation, and now future wardens. Finally, we're looking at working at reducing risk reduction for our properties in the community because they're beachfront and they're really under stress by planting corals at the reef crest to reduce wave energy that comes to shore. We're kind of building a corridor between the reefs and the shoreline. We're protecting the seagrasses, so we recently mapped all the areas in our destination. And we're looking now at creating sand dunes for native and invasive removal. So we're removing all the invasive species and replanting it with natives and endemics to increase biodiversity in this ecosystem. They're all nature-based solutions that we're implementing alongside the community for this efforts. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Victor. Simon, you're now in the hot seat. Please tell us how the shipping breakthrough can help transition the shipping industry.
Okay, so where to start with that? I think if we can start with understanding, actually I really like how Victor and Ignacio both brought up people in these solutions. And also I really like that you talked about Jamaica because I work with the Caribbean countries a lot. And one of the things, if we're going to look at a breakthrough moving forward, is looking at connectivity and collaboration between countries and ports. So if we just take ports as an example of how we can work with them, we can look at how to green ports. We're already looking at doing this in many parts of the world, but it tends to be really focused on certain areas of the world and ignored in other regions. And that's no good, right? We cannot work in silos. Most of the time, I'm at the UNFCCC. Another silo, right? So bringing in these different siloed aspects of biodiversity, of climate change, to understand how they work together with energy systems. Because I guess maybe I'll end on this, is that what I've understood over the past year and a half, because I can't tell you how long it's been to get shipping on the map here in terms of biodiversity and climate change, but how quick it has been since getting it on the map in order to move things forward. But in order to have that, you need trust. And that trust needs to be between the people that are receiving the goods and services from those ships, from the energy producers that are producing the new energies that are going to be used, and from the shipping industry itself in order to ensure that we can move forward. So all of this together will be important for the breakthrough.
Fantastic, Simon. Thank you so much. We'll see about that trust as the audience goes forward. Ignace, over to you. We want to hear from you how the marine conservation breakthrough can catalyze investments for coastal and marine ecosystems. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The first thing I want to say, actually, that we are all friends and connected here, right? Because if we don't produce the green energy to produce the green hydrogen for the shipping, that will never work. If we don't protect marine ecosystems to deliver on the fishing targets and the coastal tourism, it will never work. So I suggest you vote for all the 5 of us. On your question, Pauli, this is the core of the conversation, right? How do we finance these solutions? What we have taken as an approach for the work on marine conservation is to be ecosystem specific, to be able to translate specific targets for financial institutions and to be tangible in our discussions, right? So what we have done, for instance, with mangrove is that we have set a specific targets around 15 million hectares of mangrove has to be restored and protected to reach this tipping point, this maturity in the sector by 2030, and we know that we need to invest $4 billion. This is not, a fundraising exercise. What we are looking to do is how can we stimulate financial instruments to better take into consideration the value of mangrove into their operations. So we believe that if we reach sufficient leverage of investment from the private sector and public sector of the level of 4 billion by 2030, we will reach sufficient maturity in the sector, and then mangrove will be part of the conversation and the investment decision from these institutions. We are slowly getting there. We already have, massive support from governments, 30 of them, 25 financial institutions, 100 of NGOs on this journey. There is a big team that is currently being set up to really work with financial institutions to understand how existing financial instruments can be tailored and used to invest in mangrove-positive businesses. So I'm very hopeful. This conversation has, hopefully helped inform the conversation here at CBD around finance. So you can see that what we have discussed, made progress on in the UNFCCC context, in this case at COP28, is coming here to inform the CBD convention, and we'll continue the journey in Baku in a few weeks now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ignace. Now we have more information to go on, but we're sure that our live audience today has questions. So are there any brave souls that would like to grill our contestants? Yes, Lorelei, Maureen, we have please introduce yourself and ask if you have a specific contestant you would like to direct your question to.
I'm Mark Dickey Collis, here with IUCN Fisheries Expert Group, SEM. Annie emphasized the importance of data and knowledge, and my question is actually to René, because we see in Northern Europe a huge drive which is affecting lots of people in terms of some of the industries that we've heard about today in various sessions. But the data and the accessibility to that information and data doesn't seem to be coordinated or coming through to general public and also scientists and researchers.
You know what? I think we'll take 2 more questions and then we'll come back. But thank you for that excellent question. Any other questions for our panelists? Our contestants, rather. Excuse me.
Wait, somebody wins?
We have one over here.
We need music.
Hello, thank we need a prize.
Patricia Ricard, Platform Ocean and Climate. I used to have a voice, sorry. 2 questions. One's for you, Ignace. Does your coastal tourism integrated sea level rise? Because that's going to be a little issue, maybe. And second question for Annie. How do you deal with industrial fisheries for a fish meal? Because that's going to be an issue too in the future. So how do you turn that around to make a breakthrough? Thank you.
Fantastic. Great questions. One more question before we turn it back to our contestants. We have one over here, one over here.
Hi, Bruna Kamps from Center for International Environmental Law. And if you're here this morning, you know what I'm going to ask about. I'm going to ask all the contestants, sorry, long day, to tell us more, what are you doing to fight off oil and gas industry? Thank you.
All right, let us go back to our contestants and we'll see if we have time for more questions. Renee, over to you.
I'll start with the data question. Thank you for that question. Love talking about data. So data is critical to the responsible siting of all these projects. Governments demand it. We use it in designing our wind farms to make sure that they're insurable and operable for the 30-year lifetime of the project. So it's critical, and we put a lot of focus and investment into making sure we've got really high-quality data. The question, and much of that data is eventually ultimately shared through the environmental impact statements that we put out for a given project. So they are accessible. And the Crown Estate, for example, has a stellar marine data platform that I encourage you to take a look at. But one country isn't just enough. So we've been working with IOC UNESCO, which has a corporate data group chaired by colleagues at Fugro, basically working across the ocean economy to try to make sure that the data that we all collect, whether it's bathymetry, which comes with all sorts of security questions around how to share those data, to biological data, are available and accessible. The question is, A, what's the right data to share? What are the questions that we're collectively trying to answer? Because personally, I'm always worried that in the pursuit of building more and more data platforms, we're going to continue to create additional energy demand and for maintenance of those platforms. So let's make sure we're trying to target the right questions together. And yeah, let's get corporate buy-in across the blue economy to share the right data responsibly at the right time. So critical question for sure. And ultimately helps us steward the environment through our projects even more efficiently.
Great, thank you. Rennie, over to you. Annie.
Thank you. So on indigenous fisheries for...
A little closer to the microphone. Live TV.
Repeat the question, please. Industrial fishing for fish meal and aquaculture. I heard indigenous, so I'm glad I repeated the question. Thank you. How do we deal with that? Well, we had a session yesterday on mesopelagic fishing, and in that session yesterday, we called for precautionary principles. And so we are promoting that approach while we do the science and the data to understand what the impacts on that will be.
And our panelists, would you like to come back on the other questions? On the tourism.
Yeah, I think I could contribute a little bit to the sea level rise. When we look at sea level rise, I kind of think about going back to the data collecting. So from our perspective and the coastal tourism, we're one of the biggest beneficiaries of the ecosystem, but we're also one of the biggest institutions that are at risk from sea level rise. So that's why our industry has committed to being carbon neutral by 2030. Iberostar is decarbonizing its operations as maximum as we can, and we're using nature-based solution projects to compensate for whatever we can decarbonize. That's why we're investing in high-quality carbon credit projects as well, working directly with the communities to address this, because the way we see it is ecosystems and the services they provide don't necessarily have a political boundary. So we need to not only work in front of our properties, but we also need to work with the communities that benefit from this and are usually the most impacted by any of the tourism activities that we do, and in general, any of the biodiversity degradation or any of the climate change impacts that we face. So we are sort of hoping to incentivize other sectors as well and other hotels to join us on this adventure so that we could have a bigger impact that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
And just wanted to chip in real fast again on the data point. Hub Ocean recently released a report that only 3% of those data, ocean data, is contributed by private companies. So we're also getting to a point where, I think we know we've got more to offer, and that's something that it's a great example of what can be contributed.
Fantastic. Ignace?
Maybe tackling the question on oil and gas, as if I can, but I mean, obviously, the offshore wind breakthrough is here to show, the potential for shifting investment to the right type of solutions. The ocean breakthrough is not, looking into the oil and gas sector, even if it's considered as a blue economy. What also we can say that, the overall narrative and ambition that we have is to demonstrate that ocean at large are part of the solution. And these 5 sectors can be invested to be transformative in achieving the Global Biodiversity Framework, Paris Agreement, and the SDGs. So that's, our approach. But that's certainly, this is, a big element to tackle in the room. But I know Ørsted and many other companies investing hardly in offshore wind are now, seeing some shift in investment from oil and gas companies that are trying to shift their portfolio. So we are seeing some trends, right? I don't know if we can speak.
I think hopefully transparent what we're doing to stop the fossil fuel industry and to contribute to decarbonization. I think one of the pieces that's critical to us in the just transition is also making sure that nobody gets left behind. And so, for offshore wind specifically, that might include fishing communities. That's the people who work at the plants, for example, coal plants or nuclear plants, for example, in Morro Bay. Offshore wind is going to come to help transition that facility as a key interconnection point to the shore. So it's also about trying to make sure that we're getting the most out of those assets that we possibly can to accelerate the transition and change hands as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Rennie. Over to you, Simon.
Hi. Yeah, I had something else to say on oil and gas, but actually, just off what Rennie and Ignace just said, this is really also an important part. In order to combat oil and gas, though, it's to understand where those other energy sources come from. So I work mostly with the Global South countries. I hate that term, but okay, we'll go with that for now. So countries, for example, in Namibia that work a lot with green hydrogen, the Comoros, which use wooden propulsion systems, is to know where the what energy is out there and who can use it, first of all. Second of all, to get that political buy-in that it will be used in this industry, in those national action plans that they're going to put in place. Because if we go back to the just transition, which is what literally what we're talking about in shipping this year, it's so important to understand that just transition. And in fact, I should have probably just talked all about that today, is because there's a real human, tangible element to this as well. From both the people that are needing the goods and services that come to them, to the port workers, to the seafarers, there's a whole series of retraining that will have to be done in order to train for this next vision of energy systems that are going to be there. Now that's exciting. It can be in place, but there are real people behind those aspects as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Simon. All right, Ignace, the last word, and then we have a few. I thought you were coming in.
I have something to say, obviously. No, there's something I wanted to say as well on the oil and gas and the transition is that the point is all about energy security and stability of pricing for these economies, right? So if you are able to develop offshore wind, for instance, and renewable energy, then you are much less dependent on a few countries when it comes to access oil and gas. So I think there is also this story around energy security and stability of prices that should be put in the conversation. So.
All right, thank you. What a dynamic conversation. Our contestants are very well prepared. And now our show would not be complete without a few surprises. We're delighted to have a few special guests joining us today who have some very clear ideas on how to power the ocean breakthroughs. Our first guest star is Yasmin Telwala, Program Manager, CMS. And we would welcome you to say a few words about the ocean
Hello,
breakthroughs.
everyone. Hi. Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to spotlight on one of the marine conservation breakthroughs. That's the 2030 seagrass breakthrough. Yay! Woo. So here, I come from the Convention of Migratory Species, which is the only international convention which works on migratory species. But having said that, it's not only the species, it's the habitat which is equally important. And seagrass stands as one of the critical habitat for a couple of species, important migratory species as dugongs, turtles, and sharks. Now you might be wondering, how is this biodiversity fitting in the Marine Conservation Forum, especially UNFCCC climate change? But that's the thing. The seagrass has got like immense carbon potential, sort of underappreciated ecosystem. We all talk and hear a lot about mangroves, corals, but here we are to again bring spotlight to seagrass. And therefore, together with UN Climate Champion team in COP28, we announced the 2030 seagrass breakthrough. The idea is collective framework for all the actors. It's under Marrakesh Partnership, so it brings in state and non-state actors to come together. And as we speak, in last 1 year, it has gained a lot of momentum. Together with around 40 leading experts from the world, we are consolidating the goals. So we are clearly going to be identifying on tangible, spatial, and financial goals. And it's all set to be launched hopefully during COP29. So we invite all of you to support, come together, not only for seagrass, but yes, all the marine conservation breakthroughs, because our collective action do matters. And again, to highlight on the interconnectedness on biodiversity and climate. And in fact, there's going to be a side event after this, and we invite you all where we're going to delve a little bit more into these marine conservation breakthroughs. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you, Yasmin. And I know there's a lot of seagrass lovers in this room, so thank you. Fantastic to hear. I also see another very special guest, Cynthia Barzuna, Director of the Ocean Action 2030 Coalition. She is in the house. Welcome, Cynthia. And I know how much she loves the ocean's breakthroughs. So Cynthia, we want to ask you, how can the Sustainable Ocean Plans help leverage the ocean breakthroughs for effective national strategies? We're delighted to give the floor to you.
Thank you, and buenas tardes, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we do support the great work that the Ocean Breakthroughs and all the partners are doing on this. As you know, the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy launched a report on climate change, and just by using the ocean as the greatest ally, we could actually bring the emissions gap by 35% by 2050. So the ocean is the solution. Why Ocean Breakthroughs and SOPs are working together? Because there's a huge connection between climate, biodiversity. We need to connect the dots. We need to work together. And basically, Sustainable Ocean Plans are a great tool to achieve the 5 ocean breakthroughs in the national jurisdictions. So the idea is to have this holistic approach based on the vision of the Ocean Panel, but also on the expertise on 350 experts around the world. And I'm going to say proudly, gender balance and geographically balanced. So this is absolutely amazing. So this group of experts already gave us all the science behind it. We just need to power the ocean breakthroughs through dynamic tools, iterative tools. So Sustainable Ocean Plans are this umbrella under which this holistic approach comes to life in terms of governance, in terms of delivering on conflicting uses of the ocean, in terms of conservation. Iñaz, I'm going to give you a point for that one, so for your ocean breakthroughs, but it's also about offshore wind, and it's also about marine CDR, but it's also about the livelihoods and getting this into the national budgets. And it has to do a bit of everything. Coastal tourism, like for a country like mine, for Costa Rica, is super important to have sustainable tourism. And Food security, food security, food security, we're going to depend a lot on the ocean. So for that reason, sustainable ocean plans can bridge the ambition of the ocean breakthroughs into action by countries. As long as we get our EEZs in order, it's going to be easier to engage into the other conversation, the BBNJ, the high seas. So if you want to learn more about Ocean Action 2030 and the work of all of our partners, I'm here all day long. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cynthia, and thank you so much for talking about the importance of action by countries, because of course that is why we're all here. So fantastic to hear. Thank you so much. We also have another star in the room, Thomas Sabrina from IUCN, one of the architects behind the Great Blue Wall in the Western Indian Ocean. Thomas, tell us how the ocean breakthroughs fit into the regenerative ocean work that you lead. The floor is yours.
Wow. No pressure. All right. Well, thanks you all, and thanks again for the opportunity. Really glad to be here. Well, you know, if I often say that the 20th century should have probably been the one of sustainability. Unfortunately, as we know, it has not. So now we're left that the 21st century has to be about regeneration. It needs to be the century of regeneration. So now, if you ask me, we're better to start with actually 70% of our planet, the ocean. So that's why today we're very, very proud to announce IUCN, together with our partners, the Ocean and Climate Platform and Ocean Innovation Africa, we will co-host, together with the government of Tanzania, the Regenerative Ocean Week on the last week of February, from the 24th to the 28th. The intention is very much to deep dive on the link between science to business, to investment, and ultimately to international policy, and make sure that we strengthen the voices of the global south, of indigenous people, local communities, local entrepreneurs, so that ultimately it is their ocean, and they are the only one and the only best player to really deliver impact on the ground. So we want to bring the ocean community, beautiful community, great vibe, from Cali to Dar es Salaam, then eventually to Dar es Salaam to Nice. So we invite you all to join us. Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for the kind invitation. I guess we'll see each other in February. So thank you so much. Now it's time to bring our show to a close. Please join me in thanking all of our contestants who did a fantastic job with their pitches. And I know you're all dying to know who won the contest. Drum roll, please. Our ocean, of course, it was our ocean. The delivery of these ocean-based solutions will deliver real benefits for people and nature by tackling both climate change and biodiversity loss. So we would like to wish all of our contestants the best with the important work ahead, and to all of you for your active engagement and support. And most of all, I would like to thank Lorelei for the opportunity to have us all here. So thank you so much to Lorelei and your fantastic team. And it is now my pleasure to turn the floor back to you, Lorelei.
Thank you very much, Polly. It's me again. Well, first of all, thank you, Polly. Thank you, all of you. Indeed, the big winner is the ocean. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate yet again, that we can make peace with nature, get back on track with the 1.5-degree target, and do that for people. We're here in Colombia having the best time. And if I have to be honest, I've been going to climate COPs for the last 7 years. It's only my second biodiversity COP, and you guys are much cooler. I mean, you're so much more like fun and inclusive, and so it's been an absolute delight to be here. And you know, when I see a community such as this one, it really makes me hopeful that we'll make it, that, you know, bridging the gap between climate and biodiversity can be done through the ocean. And I hope that today you have been inspired, energized, and more hopeful in this sometimes a little bit dark world, that we can do this all together. After being in Cali, I will very happily, and I'm trying to put my best poker face on, we'll be going to Azerbaijan, in Baku. As you can imagine, the ocean is super high on the agenda, so ocean, nature, local communities, and women are on the very last day. Wonderful. But at least we'll be there. We'll be there because it's still important. We have to continue advocating. If The ocean community does not show up at Climate COP because we don't like that it's in a fuel country, for instance. No, it's giving them too much power. We have to show up. We have to continue mobilizing the countries, mobilizing the community. So we have two very simple priorities for Baku. The first one is we have spent the last decade advocating that ocean action is climate action. We just now need to make it very clear that ocean finance is climate finance. As we start negotiating the climate finance package at COP29, we need to make sure that the ocean is embedded into this new strategy to deliver on the fantastic work of the ocean breakthroughs. And the second one, of course, is building momentum for the new wave of blue NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. As you know, they will be revised for next year in 2025. So we need to make sure that there is an overwhelming number of ocean-based climate solutions in these new national strategies. And we'll bring the vibe from Cali to showcase that we can also connect the dots with parties in their national strategies. And I was actually this morning with a colleague from the government of Panama, and he was telling me, you know what? We're not going to have two national plans for biodiversity and climate, or even a third one for desertification. We'll just have one nature plan that really embeds everything. And that's the leadership. That's exactly what we want to do. So the next step after that will be COP30 in Brazil, and we really hope for nature to be at the heart of it all. It will be the 10th year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Back in COP21 was the first time that the ocean actually made it to the preamble of the Paris Agreement. So 10 years after that, we need to make a big splash. Obviously, ocean people, we like puns. We need to make sure that we show up with a strong agenda with the implementation of the ocean breakthroughs and making sure that we enter also this new implementation phase of the Paris Agreement and the global biodiversity framework with hope, ambition, and determination. So happy Ocean Day to everyone, and join the Ocean Breakthrough family very soon. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's going to be a tough act to follow. So congratulations to the session that was just up. We're going to start the next session, which, going along with our theme of ocean as a great connector, is all about connecting science, technology, policy, and decision making. So please take your seats, and we're going to get started. All right. So do you want to come and sit up already? Or? Yeah. Okay, so if you can take your seats, we're going to get things underway. The session before us also did the amazing job. Have you got the clicker? The amazing job of finishing even before time. So we're going to also try and replicate that, because in the organization of this day, we had it really. We know it's a very busy day with lots of different sessions. So we want to make sure we fit everything in. So if you're going to take your seats, please, and we're going to get things underway. I know, it's amazing, right? There's still so many. Okay. Okay, so let's get things started. You know, when Joe and the CBD Secretariat gave us this 2:30 slot for the science and technology session. We were a little bit worried that there was going to be no energy in the room.
You got energy.
No, they can't hear. Yeah, we were a little bit worried there was going to be no energy in the room, but I see that that is not a problem. So let's get things underway. All right, so first things first. Welcome to this session, which, as I said, is about the ocean as a great connector and looking at the connections between science and technology for action. And the session's being jointly organised by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, the United Nations Environment Programme, International Seabed Authority, and GIZ. And I'm going to be your moderator for the session. My name is Alison Clausen. I'm the Deputy Coordinator of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And the decade, for those of you who know it, is coordinated by IOC, but it's coordinated on behalf of the entire UN system. And it is entirely relevant to the discussion today, which of course is about science for action. So the science is going to start with a welcoming address from my dear colleague Susan next to me, and then it's going to be structured into 2 rounds of informal discussions, and we're going to have some doodle polls and interaction with the audience as well. Another thing that the CBD Secretariat said to us was to make it fun, innovative, creative, theatre, singing. I have heard this morning that there have already been people dressed up as thermal vents, that there has been singing, that there has been music, but I will ask for indulgence because we are a bunch of scientists, and the most radical thing that we're going to do is not have any PowerPoint slides in this whole session. You will not see one graph or one illustration on a PowerPoint slide. So that for us is a big effort. But there will be no singing, which is probably best for everyone. Anyway, so since time's limited, we are going to jump right in with our welcome words. And I would like to now pass the floor to Susan Gardner, Director of the Ecosystems Division of the United Nations Environment Programme, a dear friend of IOC and the Decade and co-organiser of the session. Over to you, Susan.
Let's see how, are you getting the mic here, or should we use, no? All right, we'll keep using this one. All right, we're testing technology here. This is science and technology at work. Great to see the room so full. I think that we have seen more energy on this Ocean Day than almost any of the other thematic days, and we're really very happy to see this. I'm personally very happy to open this session because when we're talking about ocean and science, for me, it's actually personal for me, like many of you. I started my career as a marine scientist in the 1990s. I was studying sea turtles in Bahia Magdalena, Puerto San Carlos, which is on the Pacific coast of Mexico. It's a remote fishing village. And there was one day that a fisherman approached us and handed me a flipper tag from a loggerhead turtle. And that flipper tag had 2 markings on it. One was an ID, and the other, on the other side, was the word Okinawa. That fisherman in Puerto San Carlos, Mexico, was the first person to hold proof of the trans-Pacific journey of loggerhead turtles from the Japanese nesting beaches to the Mexican feeding grounds 10,000 kilometers away. And he had had that tag for years. So this, for me personally, was my first experience engaging local communities in science and data collection. And it was also a really important reminder about this idea of interconnections across our ocean, because the health of that sea turtle population that we were studying in Mexico relies on the habitat protection that's happening across the globe in Asia. And that's what the ocean is. It is that connector. What happens when one part of the ocean ripples across the globe, and it affects life, it affects biodiversity thousands of kilometers away. And that's why when we think about our response, we have to also bring the connected mindset. If we want real action and impact, we do need robust science as the foundation, and governments, civil society, businesses all need to have access to this information so that they can be making decisions that are well informed. What I learned firsthand from that fisherman in Puerto San Carlos was that involving local communities is also essential to get to solutions that make sense in that context. To drive the pace and scale of progress, science has to be accessible. It can connect communities of stakeholders, including scientists and policymakers, local advocates, across disciplines and across geographies. And accessible scientific information enables people to not only comprehend the problem, but recognize solutions, and then know whether their action on those solutions is actually making any progress. And so I just want to give you 3 examples of this. The first is to understand the problem. It really helps if you can actually see the problem. And something that we're doing at UNEP with our AI-powered digital platform from the Global Partnership on Plastic Pollutions and Marine Litter is that you can now find 72 data layers, including plastic trade data, that are combined into maps, including protected areas. And you can see at a city level how plastic is leaking and going downstream from rivers to ocean. You can forecast plastic pollution up to 9 months ahead. And so these are visualized in maps that anybody can understand. So you can look at what is the impact of my city on that ocean far away. The second is we have to translate science into policy-relevant solutions that are useful for the whole range of different actors. So whether that's a community advocate or ecosystem business, ecosystem-based tourism business, or whether it's a government planner. And one of the things we're doing is to work in this platform that we created called Empath that offers tailored guidance on marine protected areas. It covers anything from financing to gender-sensitive approaches using a user-centric approach. So you can see real-world solutions to these complex MPA governance situations. This is the kind of guidance that can help empower a local community as well as a government to take action. And finally, we have to know what is actually working. We got to be honest with ourselves about it so that we can improve and move forward. And we've been pleased to be working with the Wildlife Conservation Society on monitoring and evaluation as part of the Global Fund for Coral Reef. We've developed software that I like. Its name is Mermaid. And it just is appealing in all sorts of ways. It helps to track social, ecological, and financial indicators of coral reef protection and restoration. So it's tracking the progress. This information allows policymakers to understand what was the impact of what we did. And then, importantly, share that experience. Share what they've learned so that others can build off of that. You know, with the right scientific information, countries will have access to practical solutions. Gaining understanding of the impact of policy options to meet the GBF targets, to deliver on ocean commitments, with decisive information on the benefits for the planet as well as people. So to conclude, we have the data, we have the tools, and we have the roadmaps. So we can turn all of this cutting-edge science into meaningful action, both for the people and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. I think a few key themes there that we're going to continue exploring during this session. Obviously, this issue of connection and ensuring that we're thinking of circular processes where we're also learning from what is working and what isn't working and continue to refine that. And then the user-centric approach to make sure that the science and the technology is really being driven by the needs of the users so that we can have effective action on the ground. So I think we'll have time to dig into some of those concepts in a bit more detail in this session. But thank you very much, Susan. And with that, I would now like to call up our first group of people who are going to have a seaside chat, as we're calling it, because we're not stop calling it a panel. So I'd like to welcome onto the stage Sophie Siav, the CEO of the Partnership for Observation of the Global Ocean, Paula Sierra Carrera, the Information and Research Coordinator of INVIMAR, and Gideon Henderson, Chief Scientist at DEFRA of the UK and a member of the Decade Advisory Board. So please come up and join me on the stage. And while they're joining us, for the audience, we are going to be running a couple of polls during this session on Slido. So if you want to get ready for those, you can go to slido.com on your phones, assuming that the internet is working okay. And if it's not, we'll go the old-fashioned way and do a show of hands. But hopefully we can use Slido to dive into some of these issues in a poll. So this first chat that we're going to have is really thinking about coming back to this question of connection and connection within ocean science, because ocean science is built up itself of many different elements. And we often talk about the ocean science value chain. So I'd like you to think of our three speakers as part of a chain, a circular chain at that, and each of them are going to demonstrate and talk about a different piece of this ocean science value chain. And what we mean, or at least within IOC and with our partners and within the Decade, when we talk about the ocean science value chain, we're really starting to talk about some of the, these interrelated elements. First of all, starting with the foundational ocean observations, which is just the collecting of the, well, not just because it's a hugely complex and expensive task, but it is the collection of the raw data from the ocean. And this is obviously something which is hugely reliant on having technology, having solutions, and understanding what data we need to collect from the ocean. Then from the observations, we move through to the data and the data analysis, the organization, the processing, the storing, the managing, the sharing of the observational data. And there again, we're using technology because we're using platforms, we're using digital databases and other ways of ensuring that that data can be stored and managed. Then we move through the scientific interpretation and analysis of that data to generate new knowledge and understanding, through to transmission of that knowledge to decision makers. And of course, there we're talking about decision makers from the local community level, as Susan mentioned, through to policy makers who are negotiating and discussing international and global policy frameworks such as the GBF. So I'd like you to keep that value chain concept in mind. And here we have our very own human value chain, although somewhat linear, where it should be circular, but just use your imaginations. And so we're going to start with Sophie from Pogo on the first part of the value chain around observation. And Sophie's going to talk to us about the role of ocean observation to support our global biodiversity ambitions, the implementation of the GBF, and particularly to think about what's working and where there may be gaps in this very first foundational piece of the ocean science value chain. So over to you, Sophie.
Wrong button. Thanks very much, Alison, and thank you to the IOC for inviting me and Pogo to this table. So the GBF 2030 mission includes halting and reversing biodiversity loss by conserving and sustainably using biodiversity. The ocean, as you probably know, represents over 90% of the Earth's biosphere. Yet we know so little about biodiversity in the ocean, especially when it comes to the open ocean and the deep ocean. Sustained biological observations of the ocean are therefore critical to identifying trends in ocean biodiversity and therefore tracking progress against our mission to reverse biodiversity loss. Integrating biological observations with physical and chemical observations is also necessary to understand the effects of pollution, which should include noise and artificial light, climate change and ocean acidification on ocean biodiversity, in other words, targets 7 and 8 of the GBF. And finally, biological observations are also key to monitoring invasive species and managing fisheries, in other words, targets 6 and 10. In terms of what we already have, there are long-term time series stations which have been running for decades or even in some cases for a century. But these tend to include mostly physical and biogeochemical observations. There are also some biological observation programs that have been running also for a long time, but the data from these tend not to be easily accessible. So when it comes to a sustained open access data collection for marine biodiversity, I'm afraid there's currently not very much. But there is hope. Now, with new and emerging technologies, we can begin to sense biota at the temporal and spatial scales required. These techniques include biomolecular approaches such as environmental DNA or eDNA, imaging, passive acoustics, and animal tagging. These methods all have their strengths and weaknesses, and we need to find ways to bring these different types of data together and to integrate them with data from traditional methods. Automation, autonomy, and artificial intelligence and machine learning will play increasingly important roles in turning these emerging technologies into a fully fledged, sustained global ocean observing system for biodiversity, akin to the Argo network we currently have for ocean physics. So to answer the question of where are the gaps, I'm afraid there are probably more gaps than we actually have sustained observations. But we do have elements of a biological ocean observing system. However, we need a step change in the way ocean observations are funded and a globally coordinated approach to implement biological ocean observations and the flow of high-quality data into the data systems that my colleague Paola will talk about. I'd just like to finish by highlighting a statement that POGO, the Partnership for Observation of the Global Ocean, issued this week, which was signed by 26 of its member institutions, as well as 7 partner international and regional organizations and programs. And the statement is very relevant to the question that I've been asked today, and I'd just like to quote the final part of this statement. By upscaling existing initiatives, such as the Ocean Biomolecular Observing Network, OBON, and the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network, MBON, that are integrating cutting-edge biological techniques with traditional ocean observations, while developing reliable, low-cost, widely deployable alternatives, we aim to strengthen the biological components of the global ocean observing system, GOOSE. This will ultimately enhance our ability to measure and manage ocean health from the local to the global scale, ensuring alignment with the 2030 targets and the global biodiversity commitments. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Sophie. And some of those same issues we see, the local to the global scale. And you segued us in very nicely to when you talk about a flow of information and accessibility of information into hearing from Paola, who's going to talk about exactly that issue, about the role of data and data accessibility to support implementation of the GBF. Again, what is working and where are there gaps when we're talking about ocean data?
Thank you, Alison, and thank you all of you for being here. First of all, accessible, high-quality data on ocean biodiversity and biogeography is key to information-driven approach to know, to conserve, and to restore our ocean, as well as to prevent the future degradations. The Global Biodiversity Framework targets to prevent global biodiversity loss can only be effectively developed and accessed if the data used for them are fit to the purpose. The link and ensuring appropriate ocean data use is critical to target effectiveness, enabling the monitoring of global ocean biodiversity trends and assessment of target success. In this sense, I want to highlight 7 issues that require urgent actions. The first one is the data generation according to scientifically and operationally sound methods, as well as persistently archived and well-documented, globally applicable best practices, format, and standards. The second one is in the interoperable and quality-controlled data on a diverse range of variables. The third one is timely dissemination of data on a diverse range of variables, both in real time and delayed modes, depending on the needs of users groups and their technical capabilities. Fourth is the synthesis across different types of data and is urgently needs and could be enabled by the unified data system and automated workflows for crossing validation between data types with downstream products. 5 is the easy discover and access to data and derived products for different stakeholders and communities should be in place. The 6 is be inclusive on collecting and processing data, including the intergenerational knowledge, indigenous people knowledge, and local communities, like citizen data collection and processes. The 7 is the capacity building between the collectors of data and the decision makers, and collaboration in international agreements will be necessary for these initiatives. The good news is that we have an IOC UNESCO and the UN program, the large ocean communities across the world, not only at the member states, but also with scientists, academic research, and local communities involved. Since 1961, the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange, IODE, at the IOC UNESCO, facilitate the exchange of oceanographic data and information between participating member states and scientists, and by meeting the needs of users for data and information products. The core of the IOD in the ocean decay frame is the Ocean Data and Information System, called ODIS, is the infrastructure to facilitate the interoperability to form a digital ecosystem. The second is the Ocean Teacher Global Academy that deliver global training and generate capacities. And the third one is the most important, I think, for this scenario is the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. It's OBIS, as a global open access data and information clearinghouse on marine biodiversity for science, conservation, and sustainable development. More than 30 OBIS nodes around the world connected more than 1,000 institutions from over 61 countries. Collectively, they have provided over 100 million observations of thousands of marine species, from bacteria to whales, from the surface to 11,000 meters deep, and from the tropics to the poles. In the Ocean Decade, the strategic plan for ocean data and information management is in place with 10 white papers for the 2030 visions. 2 of them is in data, observation, and spatial representativeness of the ocean, and 1 is in the capacity development. And also we have a decade program called Ocean Data 2030. It's playing a central role in supporting the Ocean Decade mission to catalyze transformative ocean science solutions for sustainable development, connecting people and the oceans. And I want to finish by saying that we have gaps, we have challenges, but we also have many initiatives on ocean data issues. Today, more than ever, we need to work together on transformative actions for a healthy planet and economic prosperity for our people. The ocean is in your hands, is in our hands. All data do you collect and share makes the difference. Don't hesitate to put your grain of sand to make peace with nature and peace with the oceans.
Yeah, I love that. The grain of sand, every data point counts in terms of building these global databases that we can then use. And that's exactly what we're coming to now, to Gideon. And you're going to try and pull this all together somehow. When we've got these observations, we've got the data, everybody's put their grain of sand in. How are we using that to inform policy and decision making? What's working, what's not working, where do we need more efforts?
Well, that's a tough ask to live up to, and I'm going to take a slightly different tack from the preceding speakers, I think. First of all, in the spirit of a seaside chat, let me just say a couple of words about myself. I'm an ocean scientist by background, spent decades studying the ocean, and for a long time was happiest on a research vessel in the open South Atlantic or in the tropical coral reef area, studying the ocean or taking samples back to my lab to study there. But I increasingly wanted to see that data, that information that I was collecting and understanding at the ocean, come into the policy sphere and influence the decisions that were made by ministers and by senior policy officials. So about 5 years ago, I took up the position as Chief Scientific Advisor to the UK government department that looks after the environment and the agricultural system, DEFRA. And what I wanted to do today is to share with you very quickly some of the lessons I've learned about what makes effective science into policy from my experience having spoken on a weekly basis with ministers and senior officials in the UK. So for the rest of my remarks, I'm basically, although I'm an ocean scientist at heart, I'm not going to talk about the ocean. I'm going to talk about what makes effective science into policy in general, which of course you can apply to your ocean thinking. So the similarity I do have with Paula before me is I've got 7 points to make, and I'll run through them quickly. The first is that your science advice, when you're delivering it into policy, should be neutral and objective. It should be factual, data-based, and about process. And you should avoid mixing advocacy with science. Keep the things separate. Focus on the science evidence as a standalone piece of advice. Secondly, your advice should be communicated, should be transparent, and it should be open to criticism. There's no point just saying, I followed the science, without saying what the science is and enabling that science to be inspected and looked at in detail. Thirdly, your advice should always express uncertainty and caveats, and that can be difficult. Policy people often want a yes-no answer. You have to be willing to be clear about where there is uncertainty in your science advice if it's really going to have correct policy impact. Fourthly, and this is really critically missed often, your advice needs to have an awareness of scale. Too often I hear people talk about the fact that their salt marsh is going to solve the world. It might be a damn good bit of salt marsh, but if you can't scale it to the sort of scale that really is going to make an impact, then you need to be aware of that and be thinking about it. Fifthly, your science advice needs to be aware of the system and the context that you're working in. And that, I'm afraid to say, sometimes needs to include the political system that you're working in, an awareness of the limits under which your minister is working under when they're considering that advice. Sixthly, it needs to be mindful of place and the people in that place. So your advice must think about the solutions that are going to work somewhere in particular, not be general in your advice. And the seventh and final piece of advice that I give to others about making sure science has impact is try and make sure that it's solutions-focused advice. And ministers and policy officials have got fed up of hearing how bad it is, because we know it's bad. We know climate and biodiversity and pollution are significant challenges. Advice sticks much better if it says this is the challenge and this, minister, is what I think you need to do to try and solve it. And the final point, not one of my 7, but the final point that's critical is you need to know who to deliver that advice to. Work out the correct contact point, the right minister, the right senior policy official who can really make it stick. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. And I think that's a very articulate, of course, as always, but also a very practical pieces of guidance to the scientific community. And I think that sort of communication as well to the scientific community is very important. So we're quickly going to get everybody to jump onto the Slido poll if you haven't already. We've already got quite a few answers coming in. You probably can't see behind me there, but it's slido.com. And then if you go to the hashtag Ocean Decade, and there is the first poll, which is, the question is, in which part of the ocean science value chain that we've just spoken about is there the most need for investment and transformation if we are to meet GBF targets? So the options are ocean observations, ocean data, generation of new knowledge, or communication of science to policy. So I'll give you all about 25 seconds to react to that. I see the different responses coming in. There is also a part where you can put in an other, and some of the questions that are coming into other, some of the answers that are coming into other are inclusivity and making sure that local communities and diverse groups are involved across the ocean science value chain, and ensuring that society fully understands the human relationship with biodiversity and ocean. And these are very important, of course, enabling factors around the entire ocean science value chain.
How many votes do we get? One each.
Everybody gets one.
Oh.
Yes, we're in a democracy. We're only getting one vote. Okay, so the big winner of the question, and we'll keep the poll open. If we have time, we can come back to it at the end. But in which part of the value chain is there the most need for investment and transformation if we're to meet our GBF targets? What would you think it was, Sophie? One word answer. Which part of the value chain do you think people are going to say? Yeah, this is your vote.
Observations, of course.
Okay, Paula.
ocean data that including the forecasting.
Okay, and Gideon.
I'm going to buck the trend. I think we need ocean science. We need the whole value chain, and you can't separate them. Sorry.
And you were going to win, Gideon. You got 52%. The communication of science to policy is the result where at least this room believes that there is the most need for investment, transformation, and skills building, followed, sort of closely by ocean data, 20%, and ocean observations at 4%. So anyway, that finishes this first Seaside Chat. So thank you very, very much to our panelists. If you can give them all a warm round of applause. We are now going to... Thank you very much. We're now going to play a quick video, which I should be able to just hit again. And while that is playing, I would ask our next group of panelists to come and make themselves comfortable on the stage. So if David, Cesar, and David could come and join me on the stage, that would be wonderful. And I'll explain the context of this video in the moment, which is from our partners GIZ, who were not able to be here today.
Projects between African and German marine research institutions. The projects aim to strengthen the conservation and management of Africa's oceans and coasts. Partners. Why is co-design in ocean research essential to stimulate action for the ocean and people?
Sharing and deputy knowledge with the power. Hello. Hi, how are you?
The only three of us, right? Caesar. David.
And that research and implementation products are usable by all. In our study in South Africa and Tanzania, we developed strong partnerships through co-design to improve water quality, ensure healthy seagrass and associated societal benefits.
Co-design in ocean research is crucial because it ensures that the research addresses real need and is relevant to all stakeholders. In Tunisia, for example, it helps us adapt local context and political framework, enabling us to tackle issues like coastal erosion through solutions such as seagrass transplantation.
Co-design has provided for a participatory mechanism and a framework for local actors to participate in decision-making processes regarding our oceans, and especially regarding nature-based solutions in Tanzania, but also in Madagascar.
No, listen. We build strong partnerships for marine science that matters.
Okay, so now we're all settled on stage. So that video was also to give you some perspectives from GIZ, who were one of the co-organisers of this session, who were not able to be here with us in person, but who are working very, very closely with research institutes in Africa, again, across all these pieces of the ocean science value chain, with a particular focus on co-design and making sure that local communities and users are integrated right from the outset of the design of the scientific research questions. And I know you couldn't see the subtitles because of the way things are set up, but we will be able to share that video, I'm sure, through our social media networks and so on. So we're going to move on to our next Seaside Chat. And if the first part of our session focused more on describing the different parts of the ocean value science chain and how they work together, here we're going to start looking at some real-life examples of where these pieces have come together on the ground and where they're already leading to informing policy or informing decision-making or informing or supporting implementation of the GBF and other biodiversity frameworks. So again, we have three speakers on this panel. Let me just flip this over. Again, we are going to use Slido, so please have your Slido ready to go. But first of all, we have David Obura, who many of you know as the founding director of Cordio East Africa, Cesar Penaherrera, the science director at Micramar, and David Barrios, the science manager at Mar Viva. And so we're going to start with you, David, and each of you are going to have the same task to, in 3 minutes or so, really give us a real-life example of how, well, 3, 4, but, you know, I'm going to get the wind-up signal if we go too long, so 3, 4, more or less. anyway, a real-life example of how really science is informing policy on the ground. So over to you, David Oburu, to start us off.
Okay, thank you very much, Alison. So I'm that David on that side. But I don't mind changing identity for a moment. So thanks. So I've been invited to come up here and be on this panel in the context of the Ocean Decade challenges as well. And these, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the Ocean Decade and its various components. And the challenge 3 was on sustainably nourishing the global population. And the team came together to really look at how to pull together what kind of science is needed to really deliver on this challenge. So the group was led by Vera Agostini at FAO and Erik Olsen at the Institute of Marine Research in Norway. And I was a part of that group. And the idea here is about generating knowledge and supporting the innovation and the solutions that are needed. And so what I'll do in talking about that is, well, focus on an example that I know from my context in Kenya, and I'll explain that, but highlighting 2 key messages. So in the group, we identified, I think it's 4 key messages that are worth, or 5 key messages that are important about communicating about science and generating solutions across multiple different contexts. One is that they should be holistic and interdisciplinary and well connected to solution pathways. So that's very much about needs on the ground. And the second is to really enhance the focus on small-scale actors, so people themselves, including women and youth. So in our work, I work for a non-profit research organization in Kenya called Cordio East Africa. And our fisheries team, I'm a coral scientist, but we have a very strong program on small-scale fisheries. We've been building up really interesting research over the last few years, working with communities that we have relationships with over 15, 20 years now, to try and improve food security locally and food and, blue food from the ocean in the local economy and households and so on. So this is very much participatory research, so done with the fishing communities directly to identify not so much the problem, because we all know that overfishing is a problem, over-extraction from the sea and very depleted fish populations. But given the context of low income and very, limited options for the fishing gear that are accessible to communities, how to adapt those. So the problem identification was done together with the fishing communities, and then two areas were identified, which initially when I heard about it, when the team came back after 6 months of co-design on this process, and we decided to focus on, so we have traditional basket traps in East Africa that fishermen use, so they're woven together from vegetation or scrub materials, basket traps, and also nets that are used, nylon monofilament nets. But the 2 areas we worked on were on the mesh size of these 2 gears and adapting that. And I was a bit surprised because, to my mind, we've worked on this question, for decades of mesh size, and there's no, what surprises are we going to find out? And to be honest, at the end of this process, and I think it's because of the co-design process, and it was because of the focus with communities, is that we identified to increase the mesh size from about, I think it's 7 centimeters to almost 10 centimeters, and then the net mesh sizes, we ended up finding out that the small mesh sizes are not good because they catch small juveniles. Large mesh sizes are not very good because they catch endangered species like sharks and groupers and so on. But I think the main process was, because it was a co-design process and very participatory, that there was really good results came out of the process, including increased fish catch, which of course is what the fisher communities really want, but also lower impacts on fish populations and marine ecology, and great uptake beyond the initial cohort of research partners that we had. So that was a real experience in really co-designing the research in the local context to really then get the buy-in afterwards once we get results. It was much more effective than anything that we'd done before.
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, again, this question of co-design, participatory research, transdisciplinarity, and having that user-centric approach. And then you do have these surprises as you're going along, but that can result in a greater impact. So thank you very much for that. So next we're going to move to Cesar, the Science Director of Mi'kmaq, who is going to give us another real-life example of where ocean science has been used to inform policy or decision-making on the ground in very tangible terms.
Thank you, Alison, the IOC, and the UNESCO as well for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to time myself in this one because I generally speak a lot, so let's... Yeah, here we go. And also, sorry if I'm saying hi to everybody around here because it's really, really nice to see people that I know after so long. So, and thank you for being here. Okay, so 4 minutes to summarize 20 years of data analysis and science that we've been doing in Migramar. It's really hard. So, but I think if I can, share my lesson, the lessons that I've learned through this time, is that we can achieve stuff battling, our own battles in our own battleground, if I can say it that way. But it's going to take us some time. But it's not only else than through collaboration that we can actually achieve some very important and successful stories. And the things that we've been carrying out, Migramar, we are an NGO that actually was started not long ago, in 2017. And it was founded by a group of scientists that started working all the way back in 2004. Why we started working in that time is because by then, we believe, as scientists and also as authorities, that there was a connectivity between all the Eastern Tropical Pacific region. To be more exact, Colombian president, the Ecuadorian president, the Panamanian president, the Costa Rican president, they acknowledged that there was a connectivity between the islands, the oceanic islands that they had, and they wanted to recognize that by creating this intergovernmental body called CIMAR, which is called Corredores Marinos, right, from the Eastern Tropical Pacific. And that's how that started. But back then in 2004, nobody knew about how they were all connected. The idea was there. And it was right there through, as I said, collaboration between many scientists, even the authorities of each country, that we started deploying tags on sharks and started gathering information about where they were going, whether those sharks or rays or fish, a common resource, or that actually belonged to each country. And they didn't have to think about regulations through a regional perspective, just through their own microscope in their own site. So after years and years of data analysis, we actually managed to get some idea of what was going on, and that's how the concept of migravías, which is an accounted term that we actually started as a way to recognize that there were some migratory passages that some of these fish and marine mammals and sea turtles were using, particularly between Cocos Island in Costa Rica and the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador, and also between Colombia, the island of Malpelo, and Panama, the area of Coiba. So there were these corridors that I really like to call them the Serengeti of the oceans. Sorry if there's some African friends around here, but I really like to call it like that because it was very clear after layering all these tracks that we had that there was this connectivity. So, and then what do we do with that information? And that's how Science to Action started with us, to start actually lobbying, producing the necessary information and showing the managers, the authorities, stakeholders, users that there was the need to think from a regional perspective, right? And through a publication that we did we released in 2018, we were able to finally set that stone, in the ground, and everybody started seeing what we were actually researching through all these years. And I feel that's how the success stories started, because after this information showing that our countries were actually right in recognizing there was a marine corridor, they actually started working towards management that will fulfill the regional perspective. And Galapagos was set up in 1988. Cocos was set up as well early 2000s, or a little bit earlier. Sorry, don't kill me about that. I just forgot about it. But after that, Colombia as well was set it up, but they were really tiny, particularly Colombia, Malpelo, and Cocos Island. We were covering probably around 150, and yes, I'm about 4 minutes. But just to end, the idea here is that the area that was being protected or managed by then was around 150K square kilometers. Right now, after all this information that we have delivered to the governments, they actually increase the protection, not only in size, but also in a way that our marine protected areas right now are connected among each other. So we have Cocos that is touching Galapagos at the moment. and also Malpelo that is touching right now Coiba Seamounts National Park. So that's very interesting, and that's our success story that I wanted to share. Sorry.
And no apologies needed. And I think two examples that, while working at very different scales, very different parts of the world, still showing common themes about the importance of co-design, participation, and collaboration from the very early stages to have that long-term impact. So before we come to our last speaker, do go on to Slido and have a look at the second poll about the main conditions of success for ocean science and knowledge to contribute to GBF implementation. We've got quite a few votes in already, but while you're thinking about that, also please be listening very closely to our last speaker in this chat. So David Barrios, the science manager from Mar Viva, who's going to give us a third and final example of a success story, it's hard to say, from science to policy on the ground. So over to you, David.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Alison. And well, thinking about all the things that we've been talking about today, I want to share with you an example of how powerful is citizen science for generating information and doing great exercises of science in the region. And how important is this to generate really, impactful, decision making at the local, not just at the international level, but at the national and at the local level in different countries. I will share the geographic area with Cesar, because my example is also in the East Tropical Pacific, specifically in Costa Rica, Panama, and Colombia. And how this exercise can impact directly to not 1 or 2, but 8 GBF targets. I'm going just to say the numbers, because otherwise I will spend my 4 minutes that I think that now are 3 minutes. Okay, but yes, the number 1, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 21, and 22 targets can be directly impacted by this exercise. In Mar Viva, we've been working with local communities for more than 15 years in the 3 countries. And thanks to different donors, cooperants, governments, and other allies, other NGOs, and of course the local communities that are the basis of this exercise, we've been implementing participatory monitoring fishing that, have created a vision in which local communities can manage their territory and can gather the information that they need to protect and to advocate for their territory's protection. So right now, currently nowadays we have more than 50 data collectors in the Pacific coast of Costa Rica, Panama, and Colombia, 90 BMS working properly and generating information constantly. Even right now, we are generating data, fishing data, from 90 vessels and small boats. And we have more than 15 local liaisons that are helping us to coordinate all this work along the coast. So this is an exercise that can provide us with the opportunities to generate like an advocacy almost instantly. Right now, I have an example that something is happening in Colombia, in the north of the Chocó. There is a exclusive artisanal fishing zone, or a small-scale fishing zone, that is being in process of extension, and we are waiting for the resolution that is going to be released soon by the National Fishing and Aquaculture Authority. And this exercise is being led by the local communities. So with the information that we are generating in this monitoring, they have the access and the resources to defend their territories, to protect their territories, and to create like a behavior change and a culture around the protection of their resources. Of course, we have challenges, many challenges that we have to face, of course, right now. Mainly, I don't know, the constant training for the data collectors. As a local community, they don't have the background of a biologist, of a master's degree, of a PhD, but they have the traditional knowledge. They know the species, they know the sea, they know the territories, and that's really helpful. Which opportunities we can identify here with this exercise? Beyond the data, beyond the fishing data that works, of course, to statistics, to advocate, to generate like to generalize the knowledge. If we go further, we can, I don't know, maybe think on relating this data with predictable models on climate change, on biodiversity loss, and this is what we are thinking about from now to start working to provide not just like immediate information, but also, I don't know, think how the resources are going to behave in 2050, in 2090, in the future, and how can we guarantee the food security, the sovereign communities, and the well-being of the people in general. So this is the example that I have. And the last message is I want to recap what Annie Mark was saying, and is that the fishing policy should be science-based, created and implemented, including traditional knowledge and active communities participation. But I would like to add here that as institutions, we have to coordinate ourselves together to provide the tools to facilitate the information flow between us. This is a barrier, this is still a barrier that we have. We talk about generate information, joint work, but how are we going to do that? And in this COP, that we are talking about how to do that instead of saying things that we have to do. I invite you to think how can we join in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yet another diverse example, same geographical area, but talking about diversity of data types through citizen science and diversity of partnerships, but also raising fundamental questions about long-term sustainability, resourcing, and skills building, which brings us to our second poll, which we've got a good response rate to. The question for this poll, while I find it again, is what are the main conditions of success for ocean science and knowledge to contribute to GBF implementation? And this was actually a pretty close one, but 57% of you believe that participation in decision and policy development is the most important condition of success for science to be able to contribute to GBF implementation, followed by financing and investment and informed decision makers. So I think that rings true in a lot of the success stories and so on, the examples that we heard up here today. So a big thank you to our panelists for their contributions. And some of these stories you're also able to see in the new publication that was launched by our Executive Secretary this morning in the opening of Ocean Day, and which we have the QR code on a later slide, called An Ocean of Life, which is really trying to gather some of the initiatives or demonstrate how the initiatives in the Ocean Decade are already supporting implementation of GBF. So I urge you to check that out. But another big thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much. All right, so we have done the nearly impossible. We have had 6 scientists up here, not a single PowerPoint slide, not a single graphic, and everybody wants to time. So thank you to our 6 panelists. And to finish our session off, we've got some closing remarks. So I'd invite Jose Dallo to join me on stage, as well as Juan Camilo Ferrero-Hauser to join me here on stage. And as we wrap up and move into the coffee break, which is very well deserved, we're going to have just some closing remarks and reflections from our partners. So first we have Jose Dallo, the Director of the Office of Environmental Management and Mineral Resources from the International Seabed Authority, one of the co-organizers of this session. So over to you, Jose.
Well, thank you very much. Hola a todos. I'm very glad to be here. I want to thank our colleagues in UNEP and IOC UNESCO for working together to put this event today. What we hear is that there's a lot of things to do, and that's what we heard today, but also that a lot has been done, and also there's a lot of information on things that we could use better or much more. I think at least I heard as well, that there's many new things. Just to give you an example, in the last technology workshop that ISA did, we count more than 300 deep sea sensors that bring new technology, new possibilities to know more about the deep sea. So I'm very glad that this COP provides us the opportunity to learn more. And sometimes we don't know much about what others do, and we should. I say the International Seabed Authority is here because of many reasons. One is because our mandate in UNCLOS is to protect and do sustainable use of the deep sea in the area. We also here as part of UN Oceans, and we try to collaborate more with our colleagues in the UN family. We also here as members of the UN Decade and pushing and trying to get more information, the knowledge that we need. That's how we're here. But why we are here is because we have things to share, and I want to give you some examples of things ISA does that can contribute to delivering the global biodiversity framework. And just to give you 3 points on things that are here. We have more than 2 million, almost 2 million protected areas in the deep sea, and sometimes people don't know. Since its creation, ISA has provided training to developing countries in the amount of 1,000 people from more than 121 member states. Since 2020, we have facilitated the publication of 430 peer-reviewed scientific papers. We have become, in collaboration with our IOC colleagues, a nodal for OBIS, so we share all our environmental data publicly. And now we're in the process to share all the oceanographic data, not only on our website, but also in IODE website. All these things we believe can contribute and will contribute to the global biodiversity framework, to BBNJ and other global agreed frameworks. But most importantly as well, and that's why I want to share this information, also to the regulations that ISA is currently developing. We would like to invite all of you to also contribute to our processes with science, with data, and also with the idea of taking care of a global common. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. So now for the closing words of this session, and this is the QR code, by the way, that leads to the publication that I mentioned on the Ocean Decade, which actually you can't see because it's hidden behind me, but maybe when I get up and move away, you'll be able to see it. If not, it's on the website of the oceandecade.org. Anyway, final closing words, and I'm going to hand over to Juan Camilo Ferrero-Joser, the Executive Secretary of the Colombian Ocean Commission and Vice Chair of IOC UNESCO, to wrap things up and leave us with some inspirational thoughts to take into coffee. Over to you, Juan Camilo.
Thank you, Alison. And thank you for being here. Gracias por estar en Cali, por estar en la COP. The ocean is an essential component for the construction of an equitable and sustainable planet. In this sense, decision makers must adopt a proactive attitude and innovative strategies towards the protection of the ocean. The Decade of the Ocean Sciences for the Sustainable Development provides a global platform to transform our understanding of science and its influence in policymaking, such as the Kunming-Montreal GBF. Since 2021, through advances in knowledge, technology, and relationships, the Oceans Decade has enriched and broadened our understanding on ocean biodiversity and the services it provides, but there's still a lot to be done. Proper coordination, proper funding are required to tackle this immense challenge. We need all hands on deck. We long for a clean, healthy, and resilient ocean. We long for a productive and sustainable ocean. We long for a predictable and safe ocean. We long for a transparent and accessible ocean. We long for an inspiring and stimulating ocean. Our planet depends on it. Through collaboration with the Convention of Biological Diversity, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, and all decade partners and stakeholders, and especially the communities, are aiming to strengthen scientific and local knowledge dialogue and understanding of the state of biodiversity and ecosystems that support and contribute to the goals of this biodiversity framework. This joint effort between the Oceans Decade and the DBF is based on the development of strategies and solutions to mitigate the degradation of ocean health for the benefit of ecosystems and obviously humanity. Indeed, this link is reflected in the shared visions that support the achievement of all decade challenges and call us to change and improve our relationship with the ocean. In this context, the Oceans Decade and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework must be seen as complementary and mutually enriching initiatives to co-design, co-execute, and co-deliver solutions based on the science we need for the ocean we want. Therefore, within this Ocean Day, we invite every one of you, every actor, every sector, to join efforts in the international, in the national, in the local levels in this purpose. We share this same purpose, which is to move towards achieving the ocean and the biodiversity we want for 2030. In IOC, we are engaged and we are ready to support all your initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan Camilo. So that brings us to an end of this session. Thank you to all of you for being here, for participating in the polls. Huge thank you to the CBD Secretariat for pulling this all together, a massive effort. And I think I am now going to be handing it over to a colleague here to explain what's going to happen next. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I am here standing on behalf of 27 fishers, women and men that were here visiting us through the COP. However, they have to leave and they cannot be here, but they left you some messages. They left 2 videos. One was showing this morning, and now is another one that we would love that you enjoy the messages that they left. Thank you. It's just a quick introduction.
Uno de los retos yo creo que ya lo tenemos cumplido y que fue llegar aquí.
Estas reuniones de la COP16 nos generan mucha experiencia de compartir, donde posteriormente no se daba estas participaciones, pero también no fue tan fácil.
Primero, afrontar un tema en donde somos criminalizados, cuando es de bien cierto que la pesca artesanal es la actividad que durante pandemia alimentou ao mundo.
Então é disso que a gente está falando aqui, até onde essa coisa toda é boa. E vem um monte de presidentes aqui, representantes de países para discutir uma economia azul, sabendo que ela é muito ruim para o meio ambiente. Ainda assim vem aqui como é que vamos fazer para aumentar isso, para ganhar mais dinheiro.
Todos os processos e todos os problemas que tiene van sumados a las exploraciones de hidrocarburos en el mar, las concesiones de playa en las comunidades.
Y nosotros tenemos grandes debates dentro de nuestro país. Por ejemplo, ahorita que los quieren poner una planta petrolera, estamos preocupados en esa área porque Honduras es pequeño
y si ponen una planta petrolera, pues sabemos que al haber un derrame de petróleo, pues lo matan todos los bancos de pesca y destruye toda la fauna que está a tu alrededor.
El desplazamiento y el crecimiento del turismo en grandes emporios económicos que hoy lo que hacen es comprar los predios de los nativos y desplazarlos y así prácticamente nosotros cada día vamos perdiendo mucho más territorio.
Hemos hecho mucho movimiento a la defensa de la pesca. El gobierno de nuestra región no está implementando ningún apoyo hacia los pescadores.
El segundo reto, yo creo que, y principal, son nuestros derechos. Por eso estamos aquí, para pelear por nuestros derechos. Siempre se han vulnerado los derechos de las personas que viven en el borde costero, de los pescadores artesanales.
Y el derecho a la razón como pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales es un derecho de tener esas relaciones y compartir eso para defender el derecho sobre nuestra conservación, nuestro bosque y tanto marino costero, tanto continental.
Temos essa responsabilidade, sabe, de transmitir para outras pessoas o que de fato é bom, o que de fato não é tão bom, ou é ruim, ou é muito ruim.
Buscar puentes, mecanismos para poder salir adelante, eso sí, siempre y cuando que la conservación se haga con nosotros, no dejándonos fuera.
Yo no me voy, aquí me quedo, esta tierra es mía, aquí me quedo. Yo no me voy, aquí me quedo, esta tierra es mía.
Great. As you can see, we have coffee in the back, half an hour roughly, and then we come back at 4 o'clock for some of the final sessions.
Tradition and traditional knowledge are the foundation of community-based fisheries management in Fiji. Tradition and traditional knowledge are the foundation of community-based fisheries management in Fiji.
And our view from fisheries as government is, if there are systems working in the traditional way where communities are involved, so why not working with communities to share the responsibilities of managing these resources?
Protecting biodiversity is essential, but it must be balanced with a focus on global food security, including the important role that fish plays in supporting healthy diets worldwide. Commercial seafood can contribute to biodiversity by combating IUU, promoting sustainable fishing, and supporting RFMOs.
We dropped the management plan together with the community members and with the help of the village headmen and Turinkor.
and they preserve the marine reserve that was placed in their fishing ground.
Mana saya tu bata tambu na kaisa kalileu iyo salib talaga na kaya rawa seke masa tek salib talaga na kaya rawa le mbulo bana bubali.
There is an intrinsic relationship between the fishery management and the quality of water and the forest, and it's very important to maintain the ecosystem service, and for this the fishery managers can help to conserve biodiversity and the forest and the ecosystems service, and will support the food, and you can guarantee the food security for the fishers and the other rural people.
Es importante que el gobierno trabaje con nosotros los pescadores industriales para así que haga respetar lo que es la veda, para que en la veda los pescados se apareen, puedan cumplir con su ciclo de reproducción, para que así tengamos una pesca sustentable para el futuro, para nuestros hijos que van a seguir con nuestra rama, con nuestra, ¿cómo se llama?, nuestro trabajo, para que así en el futuro tengan cómo sostenerse.
In small island developing countries, I think it's paramount to have discussions and include the fisheries department and stakeholders in conversations from the very start, the co-designing and co-creation of solutions, including funding allocations or how to mobilize resources